So Natalie Ferguson, wonderful interview coming up now, worked on Waveadept's first website back in the day, has worked with and for many iconic web services in New Zealand, and she's been a backer and entrepreneur for many others. We ranged over a number of subjects with Natalie as we drank red wine with the finest of labels. Check it out on the podcast post, the picture of the label. And so, let's get into the goal from Natalie, and she has a lot. So we're sitting in a very warm room with Natalie Ferguson from Decisive Flow. I've known Natalie for a number of years, not that many years, and Natalie helped when I had Waveadept.
Back in the day.
Yeah,
it probably was a few years
ago. It was probably a few years ago now, 2009 years, that's what it was. Natalie set up our first website.
Was that right?
Yes.
So that's how I met Mike too, was through the Waveadept scenario through Twitter.
Was it really?
Yeah.
People have asked.
You sorted my Google Apps out. You gave me a couple of ideas and said, here you go, you can do it this way. And then I did it and you go, oh yeah, that works.
There you go.
Then you sent a bill on.
So you probably found me.
Yeah.
Because you Googled.
Yeah.
And you'd have found our website that Natalie would have done. And that's how you found us.
That's
it's
right.
a happy combination.
How was that? Too small here in New Zealand, isn't it?
Exactly. So Natalie, that was way back then.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing since?
Similar and different. Back then, I suppose I was doing a lot more marketing website stuff, and I have focused more and more in the years on web apps and now more mobile app design. And as part of that, probably not so much on the end design, more of the bit that comes before it, like the user experience, but potentially even a step before that in the business analyst sort of side now. I think I don't really have a job role, but I sort of slot in at all those, and that's the stuff that really I like. So
there's all the scoping out.
I didn't realise that was sort of what I did, but I was working with some business analysts on a project, and we sort of realised I jumped in at one end of what they were doing, and it is something that I think is really important for my job. So, but yeah, that's a very small part, and it sort of goes through to the wireframing and the design and the harassing people about, interactions and that sort of stuff.
So do you still end up with a working website at the end of that? Sort of, do you do the...
I do some coding still, I still do some websites because I really do enjoy the marketing side once, it comes down to the messaging and the communicating with people. But for the more complex, I draw the line now, well, I always have at a level, and nowadays for apps and stuff, I obviously partner with developers or get contracted in as part of a project team, so I don't have to do much coding. I don't think they trust me with it anymore.
I love that phrase. I'm about to use it myself, that whole get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
It's a keyboard. I don't know how dirty your keyboard is, but...
They get dirty.
Yeah.
The studies and everything.
You don't even want to look at them, eh?
Okay. And so, when you started, is it fair to say that websites were generally brochure websites, like you did for us, really?
Yeah.
This is who we are, this is what we do, click here to contact Mike.
Yeah, realistically, if we're looking at where I started in a startup. I dove straight into that and then moved on to the website. So I was sort of an all-rounder from day one, and because that was a dismal failure, the first startup, that I wanted to get a little bit more experience working for other people and figuring out how different organisations work and business world worked and all that sort of stuff, because I did that straight out of uni. So I suppose I started too far in one direction and then took a step back, maybe.
And has the tech moved on as well? As you do more shit now?
Yeah. I actually think this year has been really exciting because I think it's made another big jump, and I don't know if it's just in New Zealand, but I think people have started to realise how cool it is to have cool stuff, and so and that the cool stuff has become cooler. Like a lot of the CSS you see now and JavaScript, you can do some really nice things. Like it feels more and more like you are just interacting with the website, whereas I think even 2 years ago when we said interacting, it was kind of fake. Whereas now it is like you can do something and it will respond specifically to what you have done, which is what I find really interesting because I don't really like computers.
Goddamn computers.
I just like the idea that it's like helping you do stuff, and I think, and even the stuff we're talking about in the office quite a lot is like it's pretty cool stuff that you can do now. So, which makes my job even cooler because a couple of years ago I'd be like, wow, I wish we could do this, and it would be another month of development. development to try. So
does that blur the boundary between web apps and native apps? Is that sort of making that... You can't see me doing this, but I've got my hands are up and the lines, they're getting closer and closer. Is that...
Yeah, probably. I reckon. I mean, I suppose in my head now, and I mean, I'm not a developer, so I don't know, but it strikes me that it is just a matter of budget. Like, you can get to a certain extent now with a non-native app that's quite a lot further than you used to be able to, and it's really only if you want to get those, like, really fine details and have something that's, like, specific to the phone you're on or the tablet you're on or whatever, that you would pay the extra to get that native app, I think.
Wow, yeah, no, I agree. And definitely the Google I/O showing off, and it was a lot of smoke and mirrors, to be fair, and a lot of 1,000 developers holding up, but they showed Android running on Chrome. And that's like, well, okay, I don't know what an app is anymore. Is it a web app? Is it a... It's all just becoming one big...
But I love that stuff because, like, I was talking to Mum the other day, and she, this is embarrassing, she'll hate this. She was like, they're thinking of getting a tablet, and she's like, but we have to learn how to use this because they have a PC and they struggle with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, but the joy is that now you don't have to learn it. Like, you're stuck in 5 years, 10 years ago where everything was hard. But nowadays you can jump on anything and it should work the same as it did on the other thing. So you don't have to learn it anymore, which I think, if it's an app, if it's on a browser, if it's what, it should resemble each other.
It should.
It should.
Always, unfortunately, but it definitely should. Is that then the way that you approach stuff has changed? You're saying that you're no longer a developer per se.
And I never was. Yeah.
But you get it, you understand it. And when a developer degree. Says something, you can go, you're talking bullshit, I know.
Yeah. That's about as much as I need to know.
Yeah. Well, that's all you need to know. Yeah, exactly. But the stuff that you're designing then, is that affected by the technology underneath, or is it really you just don't care and you can go, this is what needs to happen, I know it can happen, go make it happen? Or are you still having to go, ooh, I don't know if we can do that in technology now, or do we have to wait?
I actually think it comes down to, it's funny, one of the things that I think no one ever teaches you, like if you go to design school, is it comes down to the real world and budgets, like, and organisations you work for, like in Able Tech, who I work with here. We can think outside the square as much as we like. We can be like, this is what we want to build, let's jump in and build it. Working for like a government client, for example, they're a lot more restricted in how they feel, because they have to cater for so many more different kinds of browsers. Like a lot of the things they have to look at, you have to rely on people who might not have upgraded for the last 10 years or something. So
just leave them behind.
Some people just can't. So depending on who you work for, depends on how wild you can go, I suppose. So I reckon there's still a lot of work that you do that is, it could have been now, it could have been 5 years ago. But what's really cool is when you're working with people who also want to see what's the coolest thing you can do.
So you've done, and I don't really know the history, you've done a startup and then you had Decided Flow and that's changed, but also tangentially you've been hooked with a whole bunch of startups that have come and gone. Some haven't, some have.
Yeah.
And the one I know is with Julie Starr.
Yeah. I think that one was so my history is very complicated and started really badly and sort of got progressively better.
Better to go that way than the other way.
So Decisive Flow is like my full-time job and I love it. And then I've been doing over the last however many years side projects, I suppose, where I take a small stake in a startup and be the designer.
Yeah.
And so with Julie Starr, that was a brilliant idea, all about the story, which was came about, when we all realised that the media landscape is changing and the traditional newspaper won't exist at some point. And so this her plan, as far as, I'm aware, was, it's going to change, so let's jump in now and let's start playing around with what's going to change, and if we can position ourselves so when it does, we've sort of got... but I think the timing was slightly off. I still think it was a really cool thing to do, and that was a hard one to close down because even though it never really got the traction we wanted, I still think that it is, its day will come.
Yes.
So,
Yes, right, yeah.
but you never know. You never know with timing. Whereas my tours, which is the one that I've been working on now for about 4 years, maybe, has actually that. My Tours is a tour building app for museums, councils, galleries, that sort of stuff. Anyone who has existing tours, they can come into our. I keep calling it a web platform. I don't know what you call it. The web app, and add in all their content, and then we package it up into native iPhone, Android, Windows apps, and they can have a white label version of their own tours and their own app. That has taken a couple of years to get sort of traction, but this year it feels like, we've got a team of salespeople, we've redesigned the whole admin end, it's looking really nice, we've got customers all around the world, so that idea I think took a while to bubble, but we managed to, Glenn stuck through it a lot, and it's starting to really pay off this year, so yeah.
So for those that are thinking, and there's a lot of people I know that listen to us at startups and idea people, and I've got a great idea. Having been through the failures, and everyone we spoke to has all said the thing that they look to go, I'm only here because of the failures.
Yeah, I feel like I'm slightly different in that the first failure was so spectacular, but not because of the business, but because of a person in the business, that it's taken me a long time to recover. But also I think, I'm working on a new startup at the moment, which I'm sort of not hush-hush because I don't really believe in that, but too early. It might bomb out. It might bomb out before this.
You don't need to tell us. That's fine. That's okay.
But my problem is because I think I've been around so long now that I'm kind of jaded and a bit like, chances are this will fail, and have to sort of re-talk myself into, wait a second, this could be a massive success, stop thinking so negatively. So I actually think, the idea isn't necessarily worth much, think you have to keep entering everyone thinking it's going to be a massive success, otherwise you got no hope. So, which I have to train myself to do again.
But there must be a point where, and you've just done it then, I suppose, is where you go, a failure doesn't mean that I'm going to be shot down forever and that's me for the rest of my life. I get back up and there'll be others. Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, I think the other big problem is at the moment is that there's so, like you say, everyone has an idea, everyone has a startup. How do you separate from, someone who really, and this probably sounds rude, but really has no idea what they're doing, but you're at the same level as them because you haven't done anything, but you probably potentially have more experience or understand the reality of the situation and don't expect to be successful tomorrow. So I think that's the biggest thing to get publicity is the world's full of startups. How do you stand out from the startup crowd? I think that getting up and doing it again, it's interesting because for me, I just didn't. I just was happy taking a very small chunk and going along for the ride and being a small part of it. And it was only really this year that I went, stuff this, I want to run something again. I want to get in and I want to care and I want to make or break this and it be on my head, which is, I don't know, it just happened.
Well, it took a while to get to that level where you take a lower risk and then this time take a big one this time. Yeah. It took a few years in between.
Big time. Yeah, and I think that was sort of part of the decisive flow thing is to watch other people doing it and hopefully learn from their mistakes and from their experience because there's a lot of people I know with successful web companies now and so it's not all mistakes. A lot of it is, oh, wow, that's a really good way of looking at that or you set that up really well or, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So.
Now you're here in Wellington and this is now, I was about to say startup capital and tech capital, but did you see the NZTE have just put out? The New Zealand Trade Enterprise have just put out.
No.
It's 14 regions, I think it might be less than that, 14 regions of New Zealand, and fundamentally it's like 3 things about this region that they can go and be promoted. So it's a little crib sheet, elevator pitch when NZT staff is in New York and they go, oh, tell me about Taranaki, and they go, blah, blah, blah. Auckland is the tech centre of New Zealand, according to NZT. You both got.
No, I'm not surprised.
Curious and not that. Your Raj has gone bullshit. And then you've gone.
No, I think we live in how many people does Wellington have? We live thinking we're, everything and everything. But realistically, we're tiny, and Auckland probably has a bigger startup scene than us. But let's be honest. It's just that we all know each other.
Noise down here about it, maybe, Maybe we're just making noise about it and get on.
We know each other, we hang out together, like we talked about at the beginning, and so we all think we're surrounded by everyone in the tech scene, but we just don't talk to the people in Auckland as much.
So there's 9 of us here that talk to each other every now and again, and they've got 900
that don't even talk to each other.
That don't talk to each other, but there's 900 of them.
Yeah, maybe. Or they might talk to each other, but I don't know if we talk to them as much as we potentially should.
Yes.
That's why this podcast will help.
Exactly.
Hopefully,
Well, hopefully. And one of the things that Laura talked about, was it last week? Laura's went out, and she was very focused on Wellington, not totally focused on Wellington, but New Zealand. And I asked, what's it like in the other parts of New Zealand? And we talked about some of the, the attitudes and some of the approaches to being startups. And here it was very much that collaborative approach. She said that it could be a lot better, whereas Auckland's very competitive. Mm-hmm. Having said that, having a startup is a competitive engagement, so we might be a little fluffy and...
Yeah, well, there is a lot of mutual backpatting happening, I think. Mm-hmm. And so how do you go from an environment where having a startup is something to be applauded and take it over to America where you're nothing? And, and you've been... It's sort of like, I don't know, it's probably a bad analogy, but going to school where you never learn to fail and everyone looks at you saying you did good because you're trying, and then you go out to the real world and you don't get a job and you're shocked. I think we could potentially do to be a little bit less backpatting and a little bit more like you haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
Like how many people, I don't know, with startups that they haven't actually made their first sale yet, or if they have, it's not a sustainable business, and we take that really seriously, and maybe that's not something to be applauded until you get to the point that it is actually, you've quit your job and this is your thing.
So at the moment, we're all getting certificates for showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not yet. We should be sort of aiming high, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think it might make it easier for us because, I don't know what it's like in Auckland, but here we're very sheltered and we stay in New Zealand a lot. Like, I don't hear that many, there's a few notable exceptions who jump straight into the international scene, but a lot of us look at startups as being something in New Zealand. And I think we have a lot of brilliant ideas here, but New Zealand's just not big enough to make them big. So they fail when they should have been successful, but we're too busy sort of going, New Zealand's where it's at. And I don't know how many people who've started a startup who actually haven't even done business anywhere else in the world. And it's a very scary place. America is not the same as us. No. We are not the same culture. So.
No.
That's where the Aucklanders might be better geared up for dealing with Americans.
No one's geared up for dealing with Americans, mate.
No.
It's that common language that separates everybody, and it's a very different place.
Yeah.
Well, each state is a country.
Oh, that's right.
Just knowing that fact.
Yeah.
And going, just because you did well there doesn't mean you're going to do well in Texas.
Yeah.
For instance.
But then in saying that, I watched Undercover Boss twice, and both times I was like, how did this idea ever make money? But they're just so big that, our ideas are so much better.
There's only 1 million people to buy it, whereas over there you've got a crap idea and they've only got 1 million people to buy it. But, we can grow to 10 million.
Yeah.
Well, why not? It's still 1%.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's why string cheese works there and it will never
work
here.
With
the spray cans, string cheese.
Although I have seen it in supermarkets.
Have you? No.
It's coming, mate. It's coming. Your desires and wishes will come true, don't worry.
We were talking about paleo before. That's the complete opposite of paleo.
Have it on your piece of bacon.
Squirt cheese into my mouth. Oh, lovely. So, has it changed? That's my question. Since when you started?
I actually think it's gone in a bit of a cycle, because I'm sure when I started, everyone had a startup then, and then I think maybe during the recession, people were because everyone had a startup on the side of their job, and then for quite a long time I think everyone was just focused on keeping their jobs. I mean, I don't really know, it just seemed like I didn't hear that much about, you know, the latest thing, and then now it seems like it's come back to everyone's got to start up again. But I think we're slightly more mature here now in that some of them are listing on the stock exchange, some of them are like, I mean, I know like even a company like Mindscape, and I know JD is, I'm not going to start a company that's going to stay in New Zealand. I'm going to start a $1 billion company. So like, and maybe, and I mean, he was always very onto it, so he probably thought like that anyway. But I think the companies who are starting now, while it sort of feels like a cycle, they're probably a step ahead of the ones that I first knew of.
So I agree, actually, I totally agree. The first time, when I first came here, and it was, oh, we can all do everything, and it was like, yeah, and everyone sort of talked about their own street. Yeah. And then it sort of grew into, oh, maybe this could work in our own suburb. And it's got to Wellington. I still agree as well that Wellington has that bubble. Auckland's got a bubble around it as well. Not in a tech economy sense, but this is us.
Yeah.
But most people are looking out of the bubble now and going, oh, no, we have to be out there.
Yeah.
And I don't think necessarily everyone knows how to do it, but they're looking out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think not knowing how to do it is a big problem as long as we're quite happy to try. And I think, like, I mean, I don't know too much about it, but I think Trade and Enterprise, having set up different offices around the place, they're getting serious about introducing new companies overseas. So, I mean, to me that seems, and I've heard of people using them quite happily.
The landing pad.
Yeah, the landing pad, but also I think, like, once again, not an expert, but around the world, I think in China as well, there's like quite a big group there that you still can't just expect to turn up and be handheld through the process. But if you have the drive to go and some idea of what you're doing, you have a lot more support now, which we need, because it is a big world and we're not used to it.
It's not that big a world.
Getting smaller with the internet and all that.
Oh, you reckon?
No. I think it's not necessarily, you know, the big world. It's just world view, and exactly that is, it's looking out and going, okay, well, we're here, we do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. I think the thing that Kiwis have, as an outside looking in, is okay, let's do it.
Yeah, we have that. I think we struggle to think about scale, and I felt this every time I go overseas for anything. Like, and America's a prime example, just because they are so consumerist, that there's chain restaurants of like anything over there. Anywhere you go, it's just on a scale that's so much bigger than I think you can imagine when you're sitting in, you know, a suburb of Wellington plotting how to take over the world. I don't think we quite realise how big the world is. And that's why I keep coming back to it, because I do think thinking on that scale is really hard when you live in an island, you know.
That's true, yeah.
And we can pop over every now and again, but we come back and we're surrounded by space and, you know,
fresh air.
Yeah.
That old thing, yeah.
So does that affect the way that, I mean, there's many podcasts I've listened to and they talk about New Zealand. The internet now has solved the distance issue. Whereas you're saying, well, you know, I can talk to somebody, but I don't get them.
Well, I mean, the other big change, if we're just going back to changes that I've noticed, is it used to be you can have maybe 5 developers and a designer and someone who's sort of a developer or someone who also poses as CEO. Now I think you have like 2 developers and a designer and a 10-person sales team. And I think, to me, that's that whole thing about the internet not crossing the divide as much. Well, it does, but you need the people to support that. You just can't shove something up online and I don't know how you're expecting people to find it. You need people calling, and you need potentially people on the ground. Like, I think, yes, it's a great communication tool, but it doesn't solve the need if you're a small startup on the other side of the world. And I think maybe there are a few prejudices against, you know, if you're an American company versus a New Zealand company, who am I going to trust more if I'm someone living in New York? I don't know. But having real people who can do a good sales pitch and walk you through the process, I think that's vital.
So face-to-face as opposed to...
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even need to be face-to-face. Like, I think, maybe Skype, all that sort of stuff.
I see,
not Skype. Skype feels so clunky now. But,
Google Hangout.
Yeah, anything that you could, like, use those as tools, but don't think that it's something that cuts out the need for people.
Boots on the ground.
I see. So having the website and you've SEO'd yourself to buggery. That's all very good.
Yeah.
But you still need the people to actually.
Yeah, the internet doesn't stop the need. Like, it doesn't make the world a smaller place.
Yeah.
People make the world a smaller place if they can use the internet properly.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. No, very cool. That could be our tagline for this one, by the way.
Yeah, like that.
Very cool, mate.
Show title right there.
Show title, yeah. I've got one last question.
Good.
It could be a massive answer, and I could have lots of other questions to come out.
Okay.
He's the king of follow-up questions.
Why haven't you one word answer?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Is it good? Yes. That's what I get when I ask my kids every time. You get this?
Yeah.
How was school?
Good. I get the
Good.
no, yes or
Yeah,
no.
because they haven't learned how to ramble yet. They're just like, that's something.
There's zombie on the YouTube. That's the problem.
Good.
Yeah.
But they talk on YouTube. They should be able to say.
No, that's the. They just look away for a second. Oh yeah, there's someone talking to me, but yeah. I'm busy watching Power Rangers, man. Leave me alone. That's all I get.
Good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can end with good.
Yeah, I'll end with good.
Is how. What is the question I've got? It's about where we're up now. Not startups necessarily. Web or tech companies in. I am thinking Wellington. We should say New Zealand, but I don't know enough about New Zealand. So no, let's say Wellington. What's the biggest hurdle they're going to get between now and 5-10 years time? Because in 5 to 10 years time, my view, this is my prediction, the internet's going to change everything.
It hasn't already.
Well, it has. Yeah, I know. We're sitting here talking on a phone that's going to be blasting it out. So exactly, and it's going to do it in a. It's getting faster and faster and faster. What's the thing that's going to stop Wellington companies go? We can do that. We can be a part of that.
What's going to stop them? Or
Yeah. No, it's easy to say how they can all come up with great ideas in their streets and their suburbs.
Oh, what's stopping them? Oh, I know.
It's also hurdle.
I know the answer. No, what I have thought about this recently, and mainly because a lot of tech companies already are trying to find good people. I keep going back to people. I told you I don't like computers.
No.
And yes, everyone calls themselves a designer. Everyone calls themselves a developer because they know how to use a tool or they learn something of a language. But you need to understand how to think outside the square and how to problem solve and how to understand something and do something about it. And the tools themselves are otherwise kind of useless. So I think, yes, there's a million developers out there, but try and find a good one. They're all taken,
Well, our issue is there isn't a million developers out there.
Well,
But
overseas there are
worse.
though. People I know are starting to look overseas and say, "Come and live in Wellington. It's a brilliant place to live. We need your skills," which is probably a hard thing to sell for immigration because they're probably but we have developers here. But I think the thing that's going to stop us really taking the next step is to go, it's not enough to have a design degree and know how to draw a logo. You need to understand the messaging behind that logo. It's not enough to be able to draw a wireframe. You need to understand that business. That's where the business analyst sort of thing comes in. You need to understand every detail of that, every customer, how they work, what markets they operate in, and then figure out how to make flows and then that stuff you can't teach. You've got to really care about it and you've got to spend your own time learning about it. And so I think, in any country, that's probably the biggest issue. But in New Zealand, I think we do have a little bit of an attitude of, I know how to do that and, give me a job.
Yeah.
That's put really well. I definitely agree with the whole designer aspect from my background.
Yeah.
Everyone who learns Photoshop thinks they're a designer.
Yeah.
Which is not the case.
And you look at their designs and you're like, what does
It's out
this
of a book.
button do?
It's
I
out of
don't
a
know.
textbook,
Yeah,
it's not.
or maybe that doesn't work. I know that it was a textbook understanding of this workflow, but isn't there a better way?
But then you notice they don't listen to, say, a brief or a client. They don't get that far. They go, I'm designing this. It looks cool to me. But is that what the client wanted?
Yeah. But then also, the other thing that is a big peeve of mine is the client doesn't necessarily know. A lot of clients, they want to trust you so that you can tell them. And that's what a lot of my clients say is that they want me to push back. They want to say, hey, we need this. And me say, no, you don't. What you actually need is this. And a lot of people are too busy trying to please their clients and give them what they want to whereas they want your expertise. They don't want you to be a monkey, you know.
That's what I say to them. So they, our team, we say, you're the expert in the room, not the customer.
Yeah.
That you're there because they want you to help.
And even if you go with what they say, like, I always say to people, I will do what you want because you're paying me, but I'll give you my opinion first, and then you can decide.
But does that not come with experience, though?
Totally, yeah.
So how would a young'un coming out of design school...
I'm not young anymore.
Oh, no, you're not young.
Well, the first thing they need to do is listen to our podcast.
Step one.
Marketing 101. Yeah, right there.
I think be interested. Like, I mean, I've long since think that getting a degree is nothing. Like, I'm not a huge fan of degrees. I don't have one in design at all. And my degree's in production line management. Like, no relevant experience. I shouldn't be employed. But
we may cut that. To be fair, no, cut that.
Shouldn't be employed. Because that might affect later on employment.
Yes.
Future employment.
Yeah.
But in uni, I was interested in, like, you know, I was doing work for free. I was figuring out, like, I've always had an interest in how things work, you know, how people communicate. Well, you've got to be interested, and you can't fake that, you know. If you just want to, and I know people who just want to do graphic design and want to be given a brief, and that's actually a really valuable role, and they're better graphic designers, but there is another role in there as well. And I think it's sort of knowing, don't try and pretend to be one if you don't want, you know, don't be an interaction designer if you don't care about that side of things. Don't be a graphic designer if you don't care about getting everything pixel perfect.
Yeah. Know what you do, know what your passion is.
Yeah, because you can't fake it too long.
No,
you know, you end up
tiring.
getting sloppy and you don't enjoy it. And last thing I think anyone wants to do is go to a job that they hate every day.
Perfect. Well, there's a call to action. Know your passion and do it. Dump the rest. Mate, where can people find you when they come looking for you, when they want to stalk you online? Where will they find you? It's at the bar, obviously, but online, where would they find you?
I'm in a couple of places. My website, decisiveflow.com, which no one ever gets, so you're going to have to type that one out. I blog at simpleandlovable.com, which is, I've just gotten back into it after about a 2-year break by accident.
And it is, it's one of the best New Zealand blogs going.
Oh.
By far.
Wow. You and my mum think that.
It is. You blog about...
Actually, my mum doesn't know how to find it.
This, that and the other, but it is almost always, you always make me go, oh, that's an interesting point. And we talked about one of your posts last week.
Yes.
The should women in tech have a space of their own? We should probably talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that really quickly because I did think of something to say when I was practicing.
We both said yes, by the way.
Yeah, I think in anything in life, it's all about balance, right? So I don't think it should be a woman's versus a men thing, or we need our own space. I think there is a role to play with women's groups in supporting a certain element of the world as it is today and being a breeding ground for things to happen, you know, like relationships to be formed, support to be made, people to get confidence, and then you go back out into the real world. I don't believe that women's groups should be a big thing, but I think until we figure out how to, you know, balance things out a bit more, they play a role.
Absolutely.
But that's about as far as I care about it, I think. Like, I think anyone I know...
Well, you say that, but you set it up.
Yeah, because I set it up because we didn't have... Well, we did have one. We had an unofficial one. We had a group of females founders who went out regularly and moaned in a way that we didn't around other people.
Just a night out, a night out.
And then we thought, can we justify this drinking? Maybe we should formalise it.
Get yourself a meet-up and now it's official.
Yeah.
So does it still go? You still
Yes, and it's really successful. I'm surprised because I think, like, we were all quite awkward about it because we're all fairly strong people and we're not really big fans of, oh, woe is me, I'm a woman. Like, that doesn't sit well with me. I've stood up on my own for long enough now. I don't need a women's group. But it's weird how many random people have come out of the woodwork and, like, very successful people. Like, we had someone from Air New Zealand coming and talk to us a couple of weeks ago, and she was fascinating. Like, and I suppose this is the difference, is you go to a lot of tech events and she would turn up and you'd be talking about development languages, or sort of like what we're talking about now. Whereas she turned up there and we talked about what it's like to get divorced and have that's the whole conversation was being a solo mum and how do you have a career around that. Nothing to do with tech, even though what we anticipated talking about was tech. And it's just a different flow, and I don't know if it can be replicated in other situations. I've just personally never had it in other situations. So but I don't want to do that all the time because, like I say, with being insular in Wellington, I don't want to live in a world where we all sit around and say how hard it is to do this stuff. It's nice to acknowledge it sometimes and get ideas from people, but we're pretty blunt with each other. But no, it's really successful. There's a whole range of people from uni students who've come in who are looking at working for themselves or really have no idea what they want to do, right the way through to some people that, super impressive people. And they're all equal. We all sit around and talk about things that we really struggle with.
One of the things that I find, and I do something similar, nothing like that, but mirror my men is what I do, and that's very much a man's thing. And one of the reasons that some of the wives say, "Oh, can I come?" We go, "No," and they go, "Why not?" Is it because we'd have to explain everything?
Yeah.
And I don't have to.
Yeah.
With the guys, I can say something, and they all. We're men, so we do eyebrows a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of eyebrow movements in the men's thing.
Yeah.
But that's it. Because it's like, I got you. I get it.
Yeah.
If there's a man at that group, and then you think, we want to be inclusive with Raj, we'll bring him in. 95% of the conversation will be explaining to Raj
or feeling worried that we're sounding
what's going
weird. But I think it's the same as any group. It's sort of like I would hang out with a group of founders in general, or a group of tech nerds, and I wouldn't want my non-tech friends to come because we'd spend the whole time being like, "Sorry, this is a weird nerd joke." The world is full of groups, and I think we can focus on men, women's groups. But let's be honest, it's just another group, and don't focus on it. Don't hang out in it all the time. But they have their role.
Yeah, well, the thing is, yes, I agree. It is just another group, but it is just another group that you started and you did it, and people go, "That's cool." Yeah,
it is cool. I stand by it. It's really cool. I think it's brilliant, but I don't feel like it's a political point. It's not a we need this because the world is full of awful men, or we're a bunch of feminists. Yeah, no, it's not like that. No. And the reason I even wrote the blog post about it was that. It makes me awkward that we don't allow men, but now you said you don't allow women. I feel much happier because it is true. That's why. Yeah. And the other reason is sometimes women will say, "Hey, can I bring my boyfriend along?" And it's like, no, the rest of us had to suck it up and turn up on our own and meet people. Yeah. So as much as you might want to bring them along as a crutch, just do the same as what we did. It's hard, but and so that's actually a little bit toughen up rather than come and join the female hug.
Plus after one or two, you're back and you won't need the boyfriend, whatever.
No, we just don't let him come in the first place.
There you go.
Exactly.
We let one guy come because he was giving us sponsorship wine. So he was allowed to come and tell us about his wine.
So you pay your way in. You can pay your way in. That's right.
He was cool though. He was cool.
Oh, mate. The woman wants to give us wine.
Of course he was cool. He brought wine.
So we've got Decisive Flow. We've got your blog. Your blog, sorry.
Twitter @NatFergster. Don't know. Yeah, that was a decision I made earlier in life.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Email addresses all over all those things.
There you go. Those two places.
Yeah.
We'll put some of that in the notes anyway.
You can probably Google me and you'll get me or a gymnast and you'll know the... I don't know if the gymnast may not be there anymore. I might have wiped her off.
Excellent. You're working with it. You can do that.
Yeah, I should know more than a gymnast about search engines.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
No, thank you guys. Really that was actually quite fun.
That was a great interview and we covered a hell of a lot on this one. One thing you should do is check out that wine label Rough Red, which Natalie said summed you up quite well.
Very good. Right, call to action. Election special. We're trying to herd the cats and get tech reps from the 5 main parties to give us time to explain the party's ICT policies, as you heard us talk about previously. And we need your help with the questions. So go to the following short URL, which we'll put in the show notes, and leave your questions. And thanks everyone who already has. Right, the URL. Paper and pencil ready.
Ready.
It's Google GOO.gl/capital W, capital A, UH, capital RD. It's catchy, eh?
Oh yeah, that'll be. It rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? One more time. That's Google GOO.gl/capital W, capital A, UH, capital RD. But as I say, it's linked from the show notes as well. And thanks to those that have already left questions. Some of them we can actually use. Nice.
Nice one, yep. Shout-outs. Thanks to Ko-Fi for her wonderful supportive words on Twitter this week. We really appreciate it.
And next week, we have an interview with Lou Draper, who's been focusing her PR firm on tech businesses. And like myself, we'll all learn what PR is. And most importantly, what it isn't. We'll get some common pitfalls for the young players out there and some awesome hints and tips to manage your publicity.
And as always, don't take our jibber-jabber as gospel. Get all the links to the stories we reference in our show notes. And all the notes are one place, of course. They're linked from the #me podcast post when we go live on Tuesdays, or simply Google Access Granted show notes.
Look on Twitter for me, at MiramarMike, MiramarMike, it's an A, not an I, and Raj at NZRaj. Use our podcast hashtag #AccessGranted, or you could even email us on accessgranted@me.co.nz. And for all the hashtag goodness, such as the Twitter link, Facebook page, news, prizes, and much, much more, go to the #me.co.nz website.
Thanks for your time, and see you next Tuesday with the Kiwi Tech News for those who make the computers do what they do. Ka kite anō.
#me.co.nz